Welcome to Booktopia TV. I'm John Purcell, and I'm delighted to be here with Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki.
Kruszelnicki. Together.
Kruszelnicki.
Perfect.
There we go. Welcome, Doctor.
Dr. John, thank you.
I've been looking at this, your new book, The House of Karls, and your previous books, Game of Gnomes, and 50 Shades of Grey Matter.
Grey Matter, yes. Yeah. Shameless plagiarising or manipulation of cultural icons to try and get some publicity for free.
Well, I was thinking there's a couple of missed opportunities. Andrew and I were running through them earlier. We had the Da Vinci Karl, which is a missed opportunity.
Da Vinci Karl.
We had a Clockwork Karl.
Clockwork, that's a long way back, but yeah, that's good.
And then there's Eat, Pray, Karl.
Eat, Pray, Karl.
Yeah. So I do have some...
Eat, Pray, Karl, but is it going to be big next Christmas?
No, I've got the ones for next Christmas. Here we go. So it's got The Narrow Road to the Deep, Karl, from the Booker Prize winner.
Yep.
We've got,
not deep enough for everybody. We're trying to go for mass culture, but I see where you're coming from. That's good.
And then we have The Fault in Our Karls, from A Fault in Our Stars.
Yep.
Pretty big title this year. And Andrew's put in Breaking Karl.
Breaking Karl. Well, unfortunately, I'll probably go with that one purely because it covers so much a wider audience.
And it has so much chemistry in it.
Yeah, well, it does, but apparently, well, we shouldn't do any, giving away the plot before the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was looking up your history and looking at all the different things that you've done in your life, and my concern, my worry was, but I was looking through the number of books that you've written, and I can't see one on time management, and yet you seem to control time. How do you begin to be a physicist, tutor, filmmaker, car mechanic, road manager, taxi driver, scientific officer,
road diddly, and Chuck Berry,
doctor, academic, author, public speaker, television presenter, reporter, scriptwriter, weatherman, radio?
Did I test drove 4-wheel drives for 20 years?
No, that's not there.
Oh, they left that out. You can't get good help nowadays.
So you're either a time lord or you're extraordinarily efficient at organising your time. Any help for others?
Basically, when I was 16, I was trying to read The Republic by Plato, and I couldn't. And it sort of starts off with this deep moral thing that I couldn't understand at the beginning, which is basically, if you're invisible, would you still be honest and a good person? And this guy that Plato tells the story of is not. But as he goes through, he says this phrase, the unexplored life is not worth living. And I couldn't understand the rest of it, but that phrase resonated in my brain because I've always had a sense of curiosity, and that just said, be more curious, ask more questions, find out about everything. Because when I was 7 years old, somebody gave me a book on astronomy, and I was just astonished to find out that we'd never get to the end of understanding everything in the universe. And so it was my goal to try and understand and see as much as possible, and I'm stuck with this poor mortal body, therefore I should use the time efficiently. And the other advantage that helped me use my time efficiently was that I'm not really smart. The average IQ is 100, I'm barely above average, 110. So I learned to be efficient. And what little horsepower I've got, I put it all down on the ground. I don't waste it spinning the wheels. That
should be like a bumper sticker. I'm as smart as Dr. Karl. Like there's hope for us all. If you're saying you're just above average.
Just above average, probably 40% of the population would be as smart or smarter than me. I'm in the top 40%. So big deal.
Being organised, being efficient, being passionate is the key.
And being curious. Yeah. And not wasting your time. Like I was reading about Ernest Hemingway, you know, the guy from the First World War. So what do you write? A call to arms.
Farewell to arms.
The Old Man in the Sea.
Yes.
Okay, so Ernest Hemingway was in the First World War as an ambulance driver and saw terrible, terrible things. And 2 years later, he's running down a street in the dark and it's pouring rain, and he's in Paris and he's alone, he's not in his native country, and he sees a coffee shop and he goes in and he calls for some paper and he has a coffee and he starts writing, and then later he realises that at that moment he became a writer at that moment. What would you do today? You'd put out your phone, take a photograph of the coffee and say, YOLO, and then fritter away your life on little trivialities, not realising that there was this creative spirit bubbling up inside of you. So I think creativity needs boredom, where you just sit back and you're by yourself. And so when you're bored, all these ideas bubble up, and some of them are just crap. If you're with somebody else, you just tell them straight away, and then they say that's crap, which is true, but it hurts your feelings, so you stop coming out with them. So you need that period of self-isolation.
So unplugging.
Unplugging from the world, where you can see if there's anything inside you, and if there's not, wait a bit longer. It'll come. You just have to wait.
Having done all that stuff, and having been so busy and having written so many books and all the degrees and all the radio, you won Father of the Year. I mean, that means you're present.
Well, that's because I've got 3 children, one of each sex.
Right.
That was a joke.
I'm sorry.
No, okay, so there's actually 5 sexes, but we won't go into that. Joan of Arc was a man.
Can you help me?
Joan of Arc
Yeah.
almost certainly was a man suffering from the condition called testicular feminisation, because when she was captured by the British, they noticed that while she had breasts, she did not have armpit or pubic hair.
Is this widely known? Is this something that is just held within the...
Oh, there are so many things that are widely known about cats and the Kardashians. Why bother with...
hours and hours of YouTube watching. Thinking about your book, and I'm thinking about the intro, the dedication, I'm sorry, where you dedicate it to the climate scientists. Why have you dedicated your book to the climate scientists?
Well, suppose I was a paediatric oncologist. So I've specialised into being a doctor, then I've specialised into being a paediatric doctor, then I've specialised again into being a paediatric doctor dealing with cancer. Is somebody going to come and say you're totally wrong for using 5-thiourosil on kids with chronic myeloid leukemia, but rather, in my humble opinion, as somebody who knows zero medicine, you should be using cyclophosphamide?
Yeah.
Nobody ever says that. So why do all these people who have zero expertise in climate science suddenly say you're wrong? Why? Because you're wrong. They've got zero expertise. One thing I've learned from my 28 years of education is to respect the people who have the education. And I don't know any geology, and I only know a little bit of climate science, but I've been following it since 1980. That's when I read my first story on what we called back then the greenhouse effect. And it's been interesting watching it over the years, as if you follow the conspiracy theory of Naomi Oreskes from her book Merchants of Doubt. If you follow her theory, big money has been put in by the fossil fuel complex to make sure that doubt is thrown on the climate scientists. And I've got a mate in Queensland whose tyres have been slashed, and everybody in his department have had their houses and their cars egged because they're climate scientists. Why is there this massive push to try to discredit a branch of science? Like, when you don't go to the metallurgists and say, what, you reckon that if you put a couple of percent of carbon added to iron, you'll get steel, and if you throw 10% of chromium, you get stainless steel. I'll shoot you for that. And you don't go to a biologist who says, the bacteria are mutating against the antibiotics. You don't have a go at them.
Well, there are occasions, smoking for one. Like, we're talking really big money,
Yeah,
so
big
they have
money.
the power to change people's opinions, to
Run
drum up.
disinformation campaigns.
Yeah.
And they're doing it all the time.
Yeah, so they've done it for smoking for the last 50 years, and they're now doing climate change.
So with smoking, all they had to do was throw doubt.
Yeah.
And the doubt is really simple. With regard to what chance you have of getting lung cancer if you smoke cigarettes for, say, 2 packets a day for 50 years, well, Professor Karl says that it's 10%, but Professor John says it's 11%. Well, they can't agree. 10%, 11%. They obviously are both wrong if they can't agree on exactly the same number. So you just throw doubt at every single thing you can, over and over, and basically the message gets through after a period of time. And the Murdoch press is absolutely successful at throwing doubt over and over again.
There's kind of a missed message there, because when you do meet scientists, they're proud of that fact that they're absolutely not sure, and yet it leaves the door open for the skeptics to push their way, especially in the media.
Oh yeah, the denialists love it. So the scientists have as their motto, I hold my theories on the tips of my fingers, so the merest breath of fact will blow them away. And so if you say to a scientist, are you sure the sun will come tomorrow? No, can't guarantee it. And you say to the scientist, that lake could that freeze on a hot summer's day? And they say, sure, and it can, under the laws of thermodynamics and stochastic mechanics. But with regard to climate change, we're as sure that it's real, we caused it, it's going to be bad, as the fact that 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
But there's a slight chance that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4.
My brain is already. I mean, I'm taking in all the information in your books, and I can feel my brain just going out in it because you're very clear. What I like about House of Karls is I'm reading it and I'm gathering these thoughts. Which, if you'd said to me, would you understand why we have ice ages? Coming and go. Probably not. And then you just in 3 or 4 pages you explain the way the orbit is different. It's not consistently going around the Earth is not consistently going around the Sun in a nice little circle. It goes out and it becomes a
lens circle. So there's 3 things. The Earth's orbit goes from elliptical to circular on a 100,000-year scale, and then secondly the planet Earth itself, as it goes around the Sun, it's tilted at an angle and it oscillates between about 21 point something and 24 point something. Rocking backwards and forwards. So the first one is on a 100,000-year cycle, elliptical circular. This one here is on a 41,000-year cycle, as it's sort of rocking backwards slowly on a 41,000-year cycle it's going around. And then thirdly, as the Earth goes around the Sun, it does this on a 24,000-year cycle. So it actually slowly sweeps out like a top over a 20-something thousand-year cycle, and there are other cycles as well, and these fit in really nicely to explain the ice ages. And so somebody will come up and say, but how can we know that the Earth is warming because we've had ice ages? And so I try to explain ice ages to them, and they say, oh, it's all bullshit. So they don't really care, they're just, I don't know, mirroring or copying what they've decided to believe. Like people will say nowadays, and I find this a little tiny bit distressing, oh, I Googled it, therefore what I found was true. So what they're saying is, I used a search engine and whatever the first thing that came up written by anybody, I'll believe. And whether that person is an academic who has spent their whole life in that field, or a drunk guy who's just standing in their own vomit in a pub, scribbling on the wall, toilet wall in Technicolor, you can't tell just from the words that appear on the screen.
How do you cope with that? I mean, you're an educator. You're out there. You're educating Australia. That's for sure. You've been. How many books have you published?
36. This is number 36 now. 6. Oh, why didn't we do 6 squared? Oh, I should have done that. 6 squared. Oh, neat. Okay.
So 36 books. You're out there educating Australia. You're constantly on the radio, answering people's questions. You've been a very, very visible educator. Do you want to break in there and start yelling and screaming at the top of your lungs, trying to get... No,
violence is not the way. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. There's 2 cliches in a row. And so in the case of America, the way that they can become the huge intellectual, financial, manufacturing and cultural powerhouse that they are, is they've got a huge population. So you can have a significant percentage of the population barking mad, and still you've got enough people with common sense to go and actually make the country the great place that it is, in certain ways it is great. Australia's got a much smaller population, and so our figures are about 10% less, so only 30% don't accept evolution or global warming. But that's due to a massive, massive disinformation campaign, mainly by Murdoch Press and Fox TV.
Now, I read in the book, and I try to get my head around it, because if I was to tell you that I was lactose intolerant,
yes,
would you be able to tell me where my ancestors came from?
Ish. Yeah. So if you're lactose tolerant, like me, and can drink a milkshake and not have gut pain or vomiting or diarrhea, you probably come either from Hungary, that's where that mutation happened 7,000 years ago, or on 3 separate occasions in Africa, in 3 separate locations about 4,000 years ago. On the other hand, if you're, and those people, the descendants of those people make up about 1/3 of the world. So I'm in a minority. On the other hand, 2/3 of the world are lactose intolerant, and sure, they can have a little bit of lactose. They can have a hard cheese, which doesn't have much lactose. They can have an ice cream. They can have a bit of a milkshake, just a sip or two. But if they have a lot, they get sick. And that's 2/3 of the world, so they probably come more from Asia.
Thank you very much for talking with us, Dr. Karl. It's been absolutely wonderful. I could talk to you for hours. There's so many things, wonderful things in this book that you cover, and in all the other books that you've got. I mean, they are the ultimate bog book. I don't know if you don't know.
I do. I have specifically written the stories to mimic the average bowel motion time of the average human.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All of Dr. Karl's books are available from booktopia.com.au right now.